Hi everybody, welcome to the March Supper Club. That's right, March. We've got 2 left to go. We're done in April, right?
Okay.
Yeah. You may notice a different background than usual. We are in the sanctuary. We're getting new carpet and changing offices and all kinds of stuff going on up there. So we thought this might be a little bit quieter. And so we're glad you're with us. Hope you're having a good night or morning if it's the Saturday morning group. This month we're taking step 8 of the 12 steps to a compassionate life. And I'm going to start by just reading you just a couple of lines from the very opening of that chapter. So this is step 8. It's called How Should We Speak to One Another? So it's about how we dialogue. And she says, our discourse, she's talking about discourse in our country especially, but in our world today, our discourse tends to be aggressive, a tradition we inherited from the ancient Greeks. In the democratic assemblies of Athens, citizens learned to debate competitively, to marshal arguments logically and effectively, and to argue their case against one another in order to win. They practiced rhetorical ploys to undermine their opponent's position and had no qualms about discrediting them and their cause in order to marginalize their policies. The object was to defeat one's opponent. Nobody was expected to change his mind, be converted to the other side, or enter empathetically into the rival's viewpoint.
So, yeah.
Sound familiar?
Sounds sort of familiar. So obviously the whole emphasis on competitiveness and winning and taking your opponent down, not for the content or the policy itself, but just in order to win, is something that we certainly see present in the political debates that are happening now and that are going to ensue in the year to come. So in that way, when we talk to one another and we are out to win, of course, it would be unthinkable to concede your point, to say, well, gee, I don't know about that. Let me learn some more about it. We don't hear a political candidate. And then, of course, this isn't just about political candidates, but about us as well and how we dialogue with each other. We certainly don't think that we're going to enter into discourse in order to change our minds, right?
Yeah, it was really striking to me when I read that piece, when she said we were trained in that way of debating that the ancient Greeks had. I went, yeah, that's really true. That's a certain way of being in the world that I was trained in. That's normal, and to kind of step out of that and go, oh, there's other ways to be in dialogue with people. And she points out that Socrates, who was living in that world, saw the flaw in this, and the basic flaw there is that your ultimate goal is to win rather than the truth.
Or to understand.
To understand, right. To learn something, any of those kinds of things. So if that your ultimate goal is really to learn and to understand, you've got to be willing to change your mind. You've got to be willing to concede a point. You've got to be willing to have that openness that we were so not trained to do. Yeah.
And so if we assume that it is okay to have a different sort of discourse, that there are maybe even more often than not, places where a different kind of dialogue would be more beneficial to the outcome, then we have to assume the basic, good human nature of the person with whom we dialogue. We have to start by recognizing the humanity of another person, to respect them, to take seriously their point of view, and that one really struck me. Often when we've already made up our mind before anyone even starts talking. We think that their point of view is incorrect and it's not tenable. And so this is a real intentional pulling back from all the decisions we've already made about the other person, the other point of view, the other party, the other whatever it is, and to actually give them some respect and assume we have some common human values here.
Yeah. As pastors, we certainly have that experience. We'll be sitting down with someone, and it can seem very unreasonable where they're coming from. And if we really are going to have compassion for this person, and to really try to see what's going on beneath the surface with them, is a great place to start. To go, where are they coming from? What's informing this perspective for them?
The easiest one for me to sort of draw a parallel in my own life was thinking back to our children when our children were small, and there really are times when you instead of just reacting to what a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old is doing and assuming that they are out to make you as miserable as they possibly can, every parenting course says, step back and try to understand what's the behavior, or identify what's the behavior, figure out what's the motivation behind it. So, the way in which, if you've had children or you've taught children, the way in which we, give that to children is a good model to use for as we move into adulthood with each other.
To do it seriously, though. I mean, even with a child, to go,
right.
really, let me try to listen to what you're really saying here. It's not easy to do, because sometimes, and this is where we're going to head next, is sometimes they actually are unreasonable. Sometimes they are out to make you miserable, right?
Right.
Hopefully not your children, but some people are, and sometimes your kids maybe too. And so what do you do then?
Karen Armstrong talks about terrorists, and the fact that the behavior is so unreasonable and is so far afield from anything that we might believe about our own values that it is almost impossible to move to a different place when beginning to talk about certain people.
And she says you certainly have to stand up in the face of hatred or bigotry. It's this kind of compassion is not simply to roll over and let them do what they want, but it is to start there, because then even if, say, with the terrorist, while you have to stand against the hatred there, you can start to understand what's going on. You can at least ask,
what has happened to this person? Right. Where have their ideas been shaped, and how have they been shaped?
Yeah, I'm going to understand them as a human being. I'm going to accept that this is a person that has some sense of good and evil, and I'm going to see, how did they get to this place where it seems so skewed?
So Armstrong says that if one way to check yourself and see where you are in this is that when you're having an argument or a discussion or some dialogue with someone, if you're having a little bit too much fun making your points and winning your points and really enjoying the fact that you seem to be, have the upper hand in a discussion, that's your pride and ego, and that does not contribute to a place of understanding. So if you're having a lot of fun in an argument, you might want to pull it back a little bit. Right.
We would never do that.
Of course not. We would never do that.
All right. Questions for this week. What's the first one?
So the first one is, do you find that when you think back to when you argue and who you've most recently argued with, the way she puts it is, are you kind of carried away by your own cleverness, about your own, ability to make the point and, to argue the point?
Yeah. Number two, as you're making your points, really to ask yourself, am I trying to further understanding and truth, some larger
What's the goal
here, or is it really to win? I mean, am I just, it's so easy to fall into that space, especially if we feel threatened. I mean, if we're in, which is her first point, when you start down that road of dialogue, when it's about, that kind of fight, there's just not a lot of room to go, I just want the truth here. You start to feel threatened and you want to win. Yeah, for sure. And then that last one, are you willing to change your mind? When you go into a debate with someone or a conversation with someone, to check yourself again beforehand, would I be willing to change my mind about this?
Our own session, the governing board of Montview is a group that has to consider this all the time. Is that the idea is that when we all come together we discern God's way and God's spirit better than any one of us can do alone, but it is predicated on the belief and the idea that we really can listen, and that someone else's perspective may actually change the way I think about something. So, and
you can tell in a year where that's really working well,
right?
And some years, there's some folks who maybe that's not as easy for them to do, and it doesn't work as well.
So talk about that and have a great time, and we'll see you in April. Bye.